Hello, everybody. This is Maya Zahira with Psychic Protection Sanctuary, and we are now live in the Psychic Protection Sanctuary Facebook group. This is an impromptu Facebook Live, so in other words, it's unscheduled. It's not our special once a month big long Facebook Live. Um, so we may or may not have some people who join us live. Either way is fine. I wanted to get on here and do just a little bit of a rant. And we do have some people joining us live. That's awesome. Today's topic, I want to talk about using discernment when you choose your energy healer, teacher, spiritual teacher, etc. So, so I'm going to just do a little mini rant today. And I want to just give a shout out to the people who've joined: Nicole Smith, Crystal, Barbara. Hey, you guys. Tell us where you're joining from. And Crystal says, yay, a rant. Yeah. So, I wish that I could be one of those um, Facebook group facilitators who gets on like every single day and does uh, little rants or whatever. And unfortunately, like my current schedule just does not allow for that. And I really admire the groups that have facilitators that do that. Just know that I love you guys so much. And when I'm able to, I do jump on. So, and today I've got the bug to do it. And here I'm getting a scam phone call, so we don't want that. No. Caller ID. Do you guys have, do you get a lot of those phone calls when your caller ID pops up? It says scam likely. Not going to answer that phone call. Nicole is joining us from Overland Park, Kansas. Hello. So, um, this is a little bit different than the official monthly Facebook Live that I do, in that I think it's going to be shorter, but who knows? Sometimes I get talking. Um, and it's also partial information. So this will be to be continued. I'm going to rant about a certain part and then I'll come on another time and talk about the rest. But those of you who are new to me, just know that if you want more information about what I do, or you just want to check me out, you can find me on my website, which is www.psychicprotectionsanctuary.com. And I literally just got done with doing an energy clearing and psychic protection consultation for somebody online in Germany. So I do work with people all over the world. I happen to be right in the middle of the United States. I live on the Kansas prairie. I love it out here. Um, but I work with people everywhere. I do have some local clients as well, but I do most of my work right here in this exact spot. So let's talk about discernment. Hi, Sherry. Good to see you. Let's talk about discernment in choosing our um, energy healers and spiritual teachers. This has been actually a really hot topic in a Facebook group that I'm a member in. And I want to just give a little plug, a little shout out to what is it called? The official name, Grounded Spirituality. There might be more to that name, but if you look up Grounded Spirituality on Facebook, you'll probably find the group. The group is by Jeff Brown, who's the author of Grounded Spirituality. And there's been a lot of conversation in there about um, abuses by spiritual teachers and things like that. And so that's been, that's a topic that I'm already passionate about. But just fair warning, now that group is all about being grounded, but it's also not all like fluffy, happy all the time. Sometimes they're talking about difficult topics and having big discussions. So if you need things to be positive vibes only, then that is not the group for you. Anyway, just giving a little plug out because I really appreciate Jeff's work. let me just get into why I felt motivated to hop on here today. So, um, I usually don't work mornings. I work after lunch. I start working and I work until like 10 or 11 at night. So over lunch, that was me getting ready for work, right? So I was listening to a podcast on my phone, and because I am always feeding my brain with spiritual information and etc. So I was listening to this podcast, and it happened to be they actually cover a lot of different topics on this podcast, but it happened to be the guest is a medical intuitive. Now, I'm not going to say who the guest was or anything. I really haven't done any research into her. I really didn't even take the time to tune in intuitively like I could do to check to see if she is a safe person to work with, because that's not really relevant here. Um, but it is, but I guarantee if I was thinking about working with her, I would be tuning in and using my intuitive skills to make sure that she's working with energies that would be congruent with what I want. And a lot of people don't do that. A lot of people will just assume that if they're an energy healer, they must be good. Um, so anyway, I want to just tell you. So she was talking about how she operates, how she works, and that she was telling the radio show hosts that how she works is that she will send her energy, her consciousness into the person's body, the client's body, and as well as her guide, her spirit guide that she works with. Both of them will enter into the person's body and travel around and do an evaluation. Now, here's the thing. Uh, 5 years ago and 10 years ago, I would have listened to that and I would have not seen a problem with that at all. It would not have, I would have had no little mental alarms going off at all. I would have been like, oh, that's cool. Like, that sounds neat. Now, with everything that I know, I immediately was like, what? I wouldn't want some spirit guide going into my body, you know? Um, and here's the thing. There really is, there's just a lack of discernment in the spiritual world. I'm just going to say it. Um, and what I think people should be asking, and what I would want to know, is who is this spirit guide that she's working with? Okay. So maybe she has a lot of expertise, and maybe you may or may not decide that you feel comfortable with her bringing her consciousness into your body. You can decide what you think about that. But then she has this spirit attached to her. Do you want a spirit? Like, that's possession. Okay. Like, you could think of it as possession. Do you want a spirit coming into your body? And, I know that in some shamanic cultures, there's a history of the medicine healer, the shaman, and or ancestors or spirits entering into the body of a sick person in order to heal them. And there is merit to that. So it's not unheard of. But with everything that I know and all of the people that I help who are dealing with spirit attachments and interference from spirits, I am just super careful about anything like that. And only once ever have I allowed a healing spirit to actually enter my body and work on healing me. That's not something that I take lightly. And I don't think you should take it lightly either. So it's quite possible that this particular medical intuitive is totally on the up and up and great and everything. And like I said, I didn't even check. I didn't tune in intuitively to see, is the spirit that she's working with safe? But what I want to point out is that most of us, like, if we would hear that radio show, then we'd want to pick up the phone and book a session like, oh, I'm dealing with some health issues that she talked about. I want to work with her. well, maybe that would be a good idea, but maybe not. So it's about using your discernment. Like, don't you want to know more about this quote spirit guide that she's working with? And I come from a perspective where I am clairvoyant. I can see energies. I can see spirits. I'm clear. I have all the clairs. I can hear things. I can feel things in my body, and all the clairs. So that does obviously give me a leg up where I can. It's easier for me to discern. Um, but I come from, the past few years working with um, many clients who've had entity attachments, and also now that I've, for whatever reason, the divine has really tuned me in so much that so that I can see false entities and entities that are pretending to be things that they're not, negative beings that are pretending to be light. There's unfortunately, a really prevalent issue with not so good spiritual beings attaching to healers. Okay. And I don't want to freak you out, but I mean, wouldn't you rather know? I want to tell you this so you know it rather than just going blindly. So there's just a lot of healers have a real blind spot because there's a belief that everything is love and light. And if it's in spirit, then it's all good. And that belief that's so common is a real disservice to clients and students, because so often a healer ends up where their main quote healing guide is not a beneficial entity, even though it might be, helping with healings. That's just part of its disguise, and it's helping. What it's really doing is, feeding off of energy or hooking into different people. There's all sorts of crazy shit that I've seen. And so that's the perspective that I'm coming from. And that's why when there's a healer that says, well, I work with my spirit guide and he enters into your body and blah, 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 I really think you should be saying, okay, that's interesting. I would like more information about that. Who exactly is that entity that you're working with? And also, you know, you've got to know that just because somebody is an energy healer or a spiritual teacher now, and they might have beautiful, heartfelt intentions in helping you, um, but you've got to know that you might actually have more knowledge about certain things than they do. Because you're a part of this group, you have likely more information about how psychic protection and spiritual warfare and false light, how that all works. And a lot of spiritual healers and teachers out there, like I said, they really adhere to the belief system that all spiritual stuff is good. And so if they're adhering to that, but you have more knowledge than they do, you have the bigger picture, you are able to see what's going on. So with that being said, it will be up to you, not them, to keep yourself safe. And that's going to be about, so how do you do that? You absolutely have to develop your intuitive skill sets. This is something I believe so strongly in. People have sessions with me, and I tune in and I can see whatever attachments or whatever's going on spiritually and how to clear it. But I don't encourage people to make appointments with me all the time. What I really want is for you to learn those skill sets. And I actually teach it in my 12-month online program, just FYI. It's called Spiritual Empowerment Academy. And one of the things that you learn is all about developing your intuition. your psychic sight, your psychic hearing, your psychic feeling, your psychic knowing, and your different psychic abilities. And that's at my website, psychicprotectionsanctuary.com. Okay, that was a little blurb right there. But I've got more juicy stuff that I want to share with you now. So more ranting. That's what I was trying to say. Hi, Erica. And Crystal is saying, that's exactly what I was thinking. Yes. So, so today when I was listening to that podcast, that was what was like, I was like, oh my God, this is an example. I want to tell this to my people in my group that this is like 5 years ago, before I got the major download that I got, I was right there with all the other typical healers and spiritual teachers. I was just like, oh, I do think there are a few bad things out there, but mostly it's all good. And I just was not. I would, you get it, you get it, you get it. So now let me just refocus here. Okay, so back to that podcast. I'm getting all excited, you guys. Rant, rant, rant. So I made a note here in my notebook. Would you let a random stranger into your house? Someone shows up at your door. You would ask them who they are. Or if they say that they're a police officer and they're not in uniform, you'd ask to see their badge, right? So it's the same thing with spirits, whether you start working with a spirit guide, a new spirit guide, or an angel or a being or something, you need to make sure, you need to ask it to prove that it is who it says that it is. And if you're looking at working with an energy healer, and there are many, 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 many wonderful energy healers out there, it will be up to you to look for the one or ones who are right for you. And even if they're not right for you, that doesn't mean that they're bad. It just means they're not right for you. And I know that you'll want to work with an energy healer who has good discernment about what energies they work with. And I know that because you're watching this video and you've watched this far. So I know, so I'm assuming that about you. And Crystal says, no, no, no. Yeah, right. You wouldn't just let some random person into your house. And even if they looked nice, especially for myself being a woman, and I don't know, it might be different for a guy. If you're a big guy, then maybe you would let random people into your house. For me, I would be like, I want to know who you are and what you're doing and what is it that you want to do in my house. So you've got to learn to ask questions. Just be more discerning. I have two other examples that I want to rant about. And the next one, now, with all three of these examples, I'm not giving names. It's not about that because this could be anybody. Seriously, there's so much of this going on. So the first example that I gave was like somebody who probably is a really good person. She sounds like a nice lady on this podcast that I was listening to. She may or may not be working with a beneficial spirit guide. That's not something that I've chosen to look into. But the next two examples are people who are blatantly working with very bad energy. But a lot of people still insisted on working with them, even though they should have known better. So I'm going to rant about that a little bit. Crystal says, I don't even like certain family members in my house. Like, you know what, Crystal? It's your house, so it's your rules. And it's the same thing with your body and your energy field. And a lot of people don't really understand this. I think in our culture, the way that we're in Western society, and I don't know about other societies. I know about how I was raised. In Western society, we're raised to abdicate our power to whoever the authority figures are. So if we're a little kid, we have to do what mom and dad say. We have to do what the teachers say. What, whoever's in charge, we have to abdicate our power to them, the teachers, whoever. And so as adults, we still tend to do that. So if there's someone that we perceive has more knowledge or more power than us, we tend to give our power away to them. Like we assume that they know more than us. And so if they say, "Oh, let me do an energy healing session on you," then we're like, "Oh, well, they're an energy healer and they've been doing it for a long time." And so we just unconsciously give our power away and we let them into our house because we assume that they would be beneficial for us. But remember what I said before, it's always up to you to keep yourself safe. It's not up to well, it should be. It is the healer's responsibility, but they don't always know as much as you do. So you have to remember that even though they might have more knowledge in certain areas, you have knowledge about you. You are going to be responsible for keeping yourself safe. I found this to be true even when I would go to yoga classes. I would find that sometimes they wouldn't keep the studio cleared, that they wouldn't clear the energy. Everybody would be on their mat, dumping all of their emotional stuff out onto the mat, and nobody was going through and clearing the energy. And so, and I mean, I can feel that stuff. Not everybody can, but I've talked to other students who've attended, other people who've attended yoga classes who've run into the same thing. And there's definitely yoga studios that clear their energy. I'm just giving an example. That it was a real eye opener for me to have that experience because I realized, oh, I just assumed that they should know better. Well, they didn't. They were experts at yoga. They knew way more about yoga than I did. But they didn't know about clearing energy because the owner of the studio just wasn't clairvoyant and wasn't clairsentient, and they didn't pick up on stuff like that. And so it was up to me to keep myself safe, whether it was about shielding myself before going into a class or maybe deciding not to go to that studio. And again, this is not bashing yoga studios because there are plenty of yoga teachers who really get it and know how to clear, but there's a lot that don't. That's the same thing with other kinds of facilities that you might visit. Erica says, my neighbor asked me why I never invite him in. I don't want to tell. It's because you have angry energy. Yeah. So now it, it's not that there's anything necessarily wrong about anger. We all have anger. That's a normal human emotion. But if that's his like predominant energy and whatever it is, anger, angry energy, or fill in the blank, whatever kind of vibration he has, if you feel that it's not beneficial for you or your home, that is your home. You are sovereign over that space. You get to choose what's there or what's not there. The same thing with your own energy field. You get to choose, not whatever energy healer or teacher or whatever they say. No, or entity. If a being appears to you, they're not in charge of your energy. Even if they say they are Archangel Michael, they're not in charge of you. You are sovereign over your own energy at all times. You got to get this. I want to just get it into your head. Okay. All right. So the other two rants that I was going to share. So, Healer X, I'm going to call him because we're not sharing names here. And if you feel like you know who this is, you don't need to share it. Okay. Because this happens everywhere. This just does. So if you recognize this information, just that's fine. So Healer X, he was very, very popular in Kansas City, where I'm living outside of Kansas City right now. He's not in Kansas City. He's actually an international healer, or was. And there were tons of people who were following him, and they would say things to me like, because they would travel to this other country to go visit him, and they would say, yeah, you have a healing session and his entities work on you. And I'm like, his entities work on you. How do they not realize that how does that sound good to them? But all these people were like, oh, his entities work on you. Oh, it's such a wonderful experience. And I'm like, I wouldn't want some entities working on me. Like, how do people not get that? And also, having the intuitive skill set that I have, I looked this healer up on the internet. The split second that I saw this person's picture, I gasped because I said, "Oh my God, that person is a predator, and more specifically, a sexual predator." And also, when I looked at the picture, I was able to get a feel for the entities working with him, and those entities felt very evil to me. And I thought, well, okay, I honor everyone's choice to choose if they want to all make pilgrimages to go visit this guy in this other country. That's their prerogative. But I don't want to be within, 10 miles of this person. He felt very bad to me. And I just trusted that, even though there were several energy healers and spiritual teachers and who were very adoring toward this particular teacher. But and my opinion was very unpopular, and I basically kept it to myself because I was just being respectful to other people's life paths and spiritual paths. But years later, it did come out in the news that this person, this healer X, I shall call him, he turned himself in for, I don't remember exactly what the charges were, but in short, it turned out that he really had been a sexual predator and had harmed many, 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 many clients that he had so-called healed. So that's an example of the fact that I listened to my gut. I trusted what I got immediately when I looked at that person. And I didn't disbelieve it just because almost all of my colleagues were totally into this person. Okay. Again, I had respect for everybody's paths, but I didn't set aside what I felt and say, well, maybe I should go too because they're all going. Whoa, there's a wasp in my house. I live out in the country, so there you go. Um, so yeah, so there's that. Okay, so my third rant is about a different healer. Healer, I'll use that in quotes, maybe with sarcasm. Healer, who used to be local to Kansas City and is no longer. And again, I'm not sharing identifying information. It's not about that. So if you feel like you know who this is, just keep it to yourself because it's not about identifying anyone. It's about helping you to develop your discernment. This shit happens everywhere, you guys. Everywhere. So, take this story and apply it to wherever you happen to live on the planet. And Crystal says, always trust that gut instinct. Yes, indeed. So let's say this other healer. I'm going to make up a name, Joe Bob. Okay. So Joe Bob, the healer. This also happens to be a male healer, but there are women and people of all gender orientations. All human beings can take part in abusive behavior. So just know that. So Joe Bob, it came out in the community that he was taking part in predatory sexual behavior with his clients. And there were several women who had come forward privately about this issue, but they were afraid to come forward publicly, which, if you think about our current rape culture, and I'm not saying that rape happened in these circumstances, it was abuse of power, though. But if we think about the rape culture that we're in, where if a woman comes forward who has been, or if anyone comes forward, but if a woman comes forward who's been sexually abused in some way, usually she's the one who's raked over the coals, and the predator gets off scot-free. That happens a lot. So it's understandable that a lot of the women did not want to come forward publicly. But there were so many uh, people who were coming forward privately that it was undeniable. Like, all of these people cannot be making this up, and many of them didn't know each other, right? So it wasn't like a group of friends got together and decided to make up a story. These were individuals that had all worked with this quote energy healer, Joe Bob, and he abused his power by gaining their trust and then telling them things like, oh, your sacral chakra is blocked, and the only way that we can clear it is for you to have sex with me. Okay. So obviously that sounds ridiculous, right? But if somebody is in that trusting mode, and also predators like this tend to focus on people who are in very vulnerable states emotionally. So they're already vulnerable. They're easy to target. Okay, and this guy, just like any sexual predator, he was very manipulative. So think about like sociopathic kind of behavior and gaslighting, to where the person doesn't even know what's what anymore. They've been so manipulated. And somebody who has an understanding of energy, of working with energy, this particular person, I have reason to believe. So Joe Bob, this person, I have reason to believe, based on what individuals told me and what I was able to read about the situation, he was, in my opinion, my professional opinion, he was clearly using energetic slash dark, non-beneficial shamanic techniques, not beneficial, non-beneficial shamanic techniques to hook into different people's energies in order to manipulate them. So it wasn't just verbal manipulation. This was energetic uh, abuse. Okay. So, what I want to say though, so since I'm ranting about discernment, okay, I'm not at all going to say that those women should have known better. That is not what I'm talking about at all, because I get it why they got sucked in. These people were in vulnerable positions, and this guy is really bad, and he has an understanding of how to how to uh, connect energy cords in order to control someone. Okay, so think like using energy to mind control and manipulate someone. That's serious stuff. And that, by the way, is something I'm going to rant about in another video. So there's zero blame at all on the people who got involved with this person. I completely understand. And they are victims. He is a perpetrator. Okay. But here's the discernment story that I want to share about this dirtbag. So, privately, there were a few people in the Kansas City community that I connected with, and I said, hey, I noticed that you're promoting Jim Bob, and, are you aware about this issue with him engaging in sexual predatory behavior with his clients? Most of them, him being in his 60s, most of them were young women, 18 to 25. Not all, but most of them were. And so I explained this. There was one person that I had a conversation with, and here's the little discernment rant that I want to get into. So um, I was talking to this one woman, and interesting that it was a woman who didn't get it. Okay. So she had not, she was, I don't know what her age was, but she didn't fit the young, beautiful young woman typical target of his. So she was older. So she had not been targeted. So she didn't get it. Okay. And let me just check my notes here. So she was hosting him for an event at her house. And when I asked her, please don't promote him, she said, well, he's such an amazing healer. How could I not promote him? I mean, I have this friend who has brain cancer. How could I keep her from receiving healing from someone so amazing? And I was just flabbergasted because she understood what I had just told her about the sexual predatory behavior. And I shared with her, which I'm not going to share here in our public video. I shared with her some very specific stories about uh, really horrible things that he had done. And I'll give one little tiny sliver that one woman that I knew in particular was a virgin when she met him, was like totally didn't understand what had happened to her at all. This was not like, people who had had consensual relationship, okay, relations or whatever you want to say. So I had told her some pretty heart wrenching stories, and her response was, but I could, he's such an amazing healer. I couldn't keep uh, my friends from receiving this amazing gift. And my friend has brain cancer. How could I keep her from that? And I get it. She really wanted her friend to get well. But how I perceive it is like, would you sell your soul to the devil? Like, or would you ask your friend to sell their soul to the devil to get a healing? I'm not saying that was literally what was happening, but I'm speaking metaphorically. Like, why would you want your friend who is energetically vulnerable and has cancer to go to someone like that for healing? Why? Oh, why? No, 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 no. Right? Oh my God. So again, I mean, I gave her the information, and I respect whatever people choose. I don't know what she ended up deciding to do. That's kind of none of my business. I will share privately some things with people, but as I have said before, I'm not the energy police, so nor should I be. So, I did my part, but it's an example of very poor discernment. You see what I'm saying, you guys? Um, there was so much evidence. This was not just like rumors or somebody's ex was mad, or it wasn't anything like that. This was, really obvious, blatant abuse. And by the way, this person, in my observation, is still doing this abuse. They're not currently um, uh, as far as I know, located in this area anymore. Although I do think they come and go. But anyway, just FYI. If you're trying to think about who this is, again, this could be anybody. Honestly, whether it's Kansas City, I've been in Kansas City for 30 years now, and I'll just say that the issue of predation, the sexual predation thing, it's way more prevalent than you can imagine. So this is not just one person. Just like multiply this like a virus. Okay, it's like, oh my gosh. And I'm not going to go into the zillions of stories, but those are my three stories that I wanted to rant about today. The first one being a more neutral story that, there was no sign that female medical intuitive is doing anything abusive, but you should be asking the question, well, who is the spirit guide that she's working with? And do you want them to be inserting themselves into your body? Um, Definitely be more discerning about that. And then and then I gave two other stories that were way more extreme. But the point being, please use your discernment and remember that just because they are an energy healer or a spiritual teacher doesn't mean that they know enough to keep your energy system safe. You have taken the time to watch some of the videos in this group, or if you're watching this on YouTube, you've taken the time to watch and learn about some of this stuff. It's likely that you may know more about this than they do, because again, there are a lot of blind spots that people have. And it doesn't mean that they're bad people. It doesn't mean that they're bad healers. There are a million amazing healers out there and amazing spiritual teachers, but just don't make the assumption that they know as much as you do in this area. Okay. I'm right now at this point, it's, mid 2019. I still feel like I'm standing on the edge of a canyon, like shouting out into the wilderness, like, does anyone hear me? Hear me, hear me, hear me, hear me. It's like, um, I'm kind of one of the only people trying to share this message, and it's not a very popular one, because it's much more popular for people to believe that evil doesn't exist, that evil entities don't exist, that it's all love and light. It's a much more comfortable belief system, but it's just not true. Okay. And I suppose it's easier for me to say that with such confidence, because of the fact that I am clairvoyant and clairaudient and all of the other clairs that I've experienced and seen these things firsthand. So I know. Um, and anyway, I could go on and on. So, okay, people, so just use your discernment. Remember that you're in charge of your own energy at all times. And it's not about having to go around going, that person is working with evil entities. It doesn't have to be all dramatic. You can just be really chill about it. You can just tune in and be like, is this healer's offerings and energy um beneficial for me at this time? Is this healer's offerings and energies beneficial for me at this time? Yes or no? And just feel into that. It could be that they're working with perfectly great energy, but it's not right for you. Or maybe they're working with some really nasty energies. Either way, all you really need to know is it beneficial for you or not? And then you can choose yes or no, whether you're going to work with them or not. But, I would say err on the side of being more discerning and more cautious, so that you don't have to clear a bunch of cooties off of you afterwards. Like, it's kind of crappy. I've had this happen in the past. It's kind of crappy to pay money for a healing session and then you have to clear yourself afterward. I went to a retreat weekend years ago. I write about it in my book, um, Darkness Disguised as Light. Um, and a few years ago, I don't remember, 4 or 5 years ago, I went to a retreat thinking that it was going to be amazing for my energy. And I assumed that the facilitators totally understood how to clear energy and how to keep us energetically safe, even though we were going to be clearing or releasing tons of psychic pain during this shamanic technique that we were going to be using. There was no understanding about clearing, all of that stuff. So we just kept sitting in that environment and just soaking in that shit all weekend. And by the end, people were cranky and angry. Like, they didn't know why. I did, though, because I could see the energy. I asked the facilitators if they would clear it, and were they just said, well, they didn't say no. They said that the owners of the facility the owners of the facility do not allow sage or any smoke. And then that was their answer. It was like, so there's no other ways that you could clear. Anyway, and that retreat was expensive. I spent almost the equivalent to a month's rent on that retreat. And I made that investment very intentionally because I was interested in experiencing an energy upgrade so that I could really make some big positive shifts in my life. But instead, for a few weeks afterwards, I had to clear my energy of all sorts of cooties I had gotten from that retreat. So that's an example of that kind of thing. And at that time, I didn't know any better because I hadn't had all of the experiences that I've had that I talk about in my book. So that's why I'm sharing it with all of you so that you will know and you can save yourself and be more discerning and choose the events and the healers and the teachers, etc., who are really going to be the best and most beneficial match for you at this time. Okay. And Julie says, Joe Bob, LOL. Yeah. Erica says, this woman might have been so fascinated by him, she was blinded. Yeah, I think that's what was happening. And I think sometimes we have attachments, like we don't want to believe certain things because we're attached to other things. So that's understandable. It really is. But it's a good example. It's a good story. It's not a good story, but it's a good example of where discernment was needed. Yep. So that's enough of my rant for today. And I made a note that I'd like to talk in the future about spiritual teachers and mentors and healers who use mind control techniques. Now, that sounds really weird, but I am going to do a video in the future about that because I've noticed it a lot. Again, we have zillions of amazing, heart centered, genuine spiritual teachers, energy healers out there. But there are some who are intentionally using manipulation techniques, and I'm going to talk about that in a future video because you need to know. I'm saying you need to know, and I know that you need to know about this. You know you need to know, right? So enough ranting for today. I hope you all have a beautiful day. Take some time for you. Go outside, get grounded, take a few breaths, check your energy field, see if there's anything that doesn't belong, and move it out because you're in charge of your energy at all times. Again, if you'd like to work with me in the future and go deeper, you can go to my website, www.psychicprotectionsanctuary.com. And under the events tab, you can click on Spiritual Empowerment Academy. And that's my online 12-month program. It's already going. You can join anytime. And we cover tons of stuff, including we go really in depth into psychic protection, psychic development, but we also go into psychic protection as well. Personal empowerment. You develop all of your intuitive skills so that you can be more discerning. And that's what I want for you, is for you to have your energy clean and clear, grounded, no weird, funky interferences happening in your life, for you to be fully empowered energetically, spiritually, vibrationally, and in your personal life as well. So I don't think we have any other comments. As always, I'm sending you all my love, and I'll see you next time. Bye.